The fire took the cabin row on a Tuesday night, and by Wednesday noon both towns had given Nora Quinn their answer. She stood in the ash of the miners' camp with her son Charlie and one scorched trunk. Her husband had died 3 weeks earlier, breaking the strike for company wages. That made her a Scab's widow in Garrick, the Union town below the bench. It made her a liability in Cold Spur, the company town above it. The company had buried her husband and closed his account the same afternoon. The Union men had burned her out and called it an accident of wind. 2 towns, 1 mountain, and not one roof between them that would take her. That was not carelessness. It was arithmetic. In a strike country, every household was counted. A Union family that sheltered a Scab's widow lost its standing at the hall, and standing at the hall decided who worked when the mine reopened. A company family that took her in reminded the office that her husband's death benefit had never been paid. She was a cost to both ledgers. So both ledgers refused her. Silas Ward heard about the fire at his own breakfast table on the bench land between the towns. He ran cattle on the high grass and sold beef down to Garrick and up to Cold Spur, and he belonged to neither. Neutrality was his whole trade. Both towns bought from him because he took no side, and he had kept that balance for 11 years. He thought about that balance for the length of 1 cup of coffee. Then he hitched the buckboard and drove down into the burned row at noon, where every window in 2 towns could watch him do it. He did not hurry, and he did not explain. He loaded the scorched trunk, a kettle, a bed frame with 1 charred leg, and a box of her husband's tools. Nora stood watching him with her hands folded, because she had learned what help usually cost a woman with no roof. Charlie watched the man's mouth. The boy was 8 years old and deaf since the fever, and lips were how he read the world. Silas turned to face her before he spoke, though he did not yet know why that mattered. "I have a line camp on the east bench," he said. "Sound roof. Good stove. It sits empty from fall gather to spring." Nora looked at the buckboard and then at the smoke still rising behind her. "And what would I owe you for it?" she said. "Nothing you'd have to pay at night," he said. "It comes with a key. You'd hold the only one." She did not believe him yet. He did not ask her to. He drove them up the bench road while the noon crowd on both main streets watched the buckboard climb. A storekeeper in Cold Spur wrote something in a book. A Union man in Garrick spat and went inside. Silas saw both and kept driving. He had done his figuring already, 1 plain step after another, and he was not a man who undid a thing once he had decided its cost. The line camp sat where a line camp should. It stood on a low rise above the creek, so spring melt drained away from the sills instead of under them. Its back wall took the north wind, log on log, chinked with lime and horsehair. A line camp was a working outpost, not a cabin for show. Cattleman built them a day's ride from the home place so a rider could shelter, keep fences, and turn cattle back from the ridges in bad weather. Whoever lived in one earned it by keeping it. At the door, Silas took a single iron key from his coat and put it in her hand. "That's the only one," he said. "I kept no copy. If I ride this way, I'll knock and wait like any other man." Nora closed her fingers around the key before she could stop herself. "Why?" she said. It was not quite a question. "My beef contract says nothing about my conscience," he said. "That's the whole of it." The terms came the next morning, on paper, because Silas had thought about the gossip before she had strength to. A woman kept in a man's cabin was a scandal that would follow her boy into every schoolyard he ever stood outside of. A woman employed as a caretaker, at posted wages, was a working tenant with a trade. So he wrote it out plain and signed it. Nora Quinn, caretaker of the East Bench Line Camp. Fair wages, paid monthly, for keeping the camp provisioned, the stove sound, and the near fences ridden. She read it twice. Caretaker, she said. Is that a real position or a kindness wearing a hat? It's real, Silas said. Every outfit this size pays somebody to winter a line camp. Ask any rider on the bench what the work is worth. I wrote the same wage I'd pay him. And if the towns ask, then you show them the paper. That's what paper is for. I don't know fences, she said. You know work, he said. Fences are just work laid sideways. Charlie can ride the near line with you. He sees more than most men here. She looked up at that, sharp, because most people spoke of Charlie as a burden softened by pity. Silas was already opening the cupboard. He nailed an envelope to the inside of the door where anyone standing at the shelf could see it. Railhead fare for two, he said. Any Sunday you name, I'll drive you and the boy down myself. No explanation owed. It stays there whether you use it or don't. That envelope was the part she kept coming back to, later, when she tried to explain the arrangement to herself. Shelter she had heard of. Shelter always had a price that arrived after dark or in debt, but a posted way out, nailed where she could touch it, made the staying hers. Every morning she saw the envelope, and every morning she chose the camp anyway, and a chosen thing is a different thing from a granted one. The work was real, which helped. She learned the camp the honest way, by what it cost to run. Wood came first, because wood was the difference between wintering and dying on the bench. She and Charlie hauled and split 4 cords before the first frost, stacking it off the ground on rails so the bottom rows would not rot. She learned to bank the stove at night, choking the damper low so the fire held coals until morning, instead of burning itself out by midnight. She learned that the chinking between logs wanted checking every fall, because one missing thumb's width of lime let in a winter's worth of wind. Silas came by on Thursdays with supplies, knocked, and waited. He taught her the fence line by riding it once beside her, naming what mattered. A leaning post pulled its neighbors. A low-top wire invited cattle to test it. Wire was mended tight in cold weather and left slack in heat, because wire moved with the temperature, and a fence strung wrong in one season failed in the other. Charlie rode drag behind them and missed nothing. By the 3rd Thursday, the boy was pointing out sage before Silas did. The towns took about that long to answer. The union butcher in Garrick shorted his beef order first, a quarter of the usual, then half, with no reason given because none was needed. The same week, the company store in Cold Spur lost his account, not closed it, lost it. A clerk turned pages and could not seem to find 11 years of custom anywhere in the book. Silas stood at the counter a moment, then thanked the clerk and walked out. He understood what he was being shown. His neutrality had been the product both towns bought, and in their eyes he had stopped selling it. He never told Nora the size of the damage, but she was a miner's wife and could read a supply wagon. Fewer sacks, cheaper coffee, a ham where a side of beef used to hang. She met him in the yard one Thursday and stood between him and the door. "They're squeezing you for us," she said. "They're squeezing me for me," he said. "I made a choice on a public road at noon. A man doesn't get to make one of those and then send another fellow the bill." "The envelope's still in the cupboard," she said. "I know it," he said. "That's yours to spend, not mine to hope on." "You could tell them I pay rent," she said. "Post it somewhere. Make it look like trade. It is trade. You keep my camp, and I pay you for it. I won't dress the truth up smaller so 2 towns can digest it. And if they starve you out by spring, then I'll be a poorer man with a kept word," he said. "I've met rich men with the other kind. I didn't care for the company." It was Charlie who changed the shape of everything, and he did it at the fall gather. Silas had watched the boy all season by then, and had stopped seeing an affliction. Charlie read lips like print, near and far. He could stand at a corral fence and tell his mother what 2 men were saying across the yard, so long as their faces bore toward him. And the boy counted. He counted everything: wagon spokes, fence staples, geese going south, and he wrote his counts in a tally book Silas had given him, in neat strokes of 5. Most men would have kept a deaf boy out of sight at a gather, where 2 towns' worth of hands and buyers came together. Silas hired him instead, honestly and out loud, as a gate counter at day wages. Counting cattle through a gate was real work with a real method. Cattle were funneled through a narrow gate in a walking stream, and the counter stood square to the gap, dropping a mark for every animal and closing each stroke of 5. A good counter never looked away, never talked, and never let a man hurry the stream. Talking was where counts died. Charlie could not be talked to. At a gate, the boy's silence was not a lack. It was an advantage. The buyer that fall came up from the railhead with his own counting man, the same pair who had worked the bench for 3 seasons. The method between buyer and seller was old and simple. Both sides counted the same stream, and at the end the counts were compared. When they matched, the tally stood. When they differed, men recounted or men compromised, and compromise usually ran toward whoever could afford to walk away. The buyer could always walk away. The small outfits on the bench could not with winter feed to buy. Everyone on the bench had learned to swallow a short count the way you swallow weather. Charlie stood his gate for 2 days and filled 11 pages. On the second evening, he tugged his mother's sleeve and opened the book on the camp table. He had counted the buyer's man as well as the cattle. His marks showed the counts side by side, gate by gate, and they did not agree. Nora went cold as she read. The difference was 12 head, and it was not scattered. It came in 2 bunches. Both counted while the buyer's man had his book turned and his mouth going, working the seller in talk at the very moments the stream ran fastest. Nora carried the book to Silas at the home place that same night, which was its own kind of statement, because she had never once come to his door. He turned the pages under the lamp for a long time. "Who else has seen this?" he said. "No one." He showed me at supper. "Silas, if it's wrong, if the boy slips somewhere, they'll laugh us off the bench. Look at the marks. Does Charlie slip?" "No," she said. "He doesn't. That's what frightens me. 12 head, he said at last. 12 this year, and nobody counted him last year, or the year before. Every small outfit on this bench has been paying that man a tax and calling it bad luck." He looked at her across the lamp. "If I put this on the table at settlement, in front of both towns' buyers, I stop being the neutral man forever. Whatever I am after that, I am it out loud." "You were already it out loud," Nora said. "You've been it since noon on a Wednesday." Settlement of accounts came the following week, in the big barn at the bench corrals, with the buyer, his counting man, the bank's agent, and buyers from both Garrick and Cold Spur at the scale table. Half the bench's small outfits stood along the walls, because settlement decided their winter. When Silas came in, the room went quiet in the particular way a room does when it has already agreed about a man. He did not come alone. Nora walked beside him in her mended dress, and Charlie walked between them with the tally book under his arm, and the muttering started before the door shut. A Garrick buyer near the wall said it low enough for half the room to hear. Now the Scab's widow keeps his books too. Another man laughed once, mean and short. Silas turned before he touched the tally book. "Mistis, Quinn keeps my East Camp undersigned wages," he said. "Her name is on the paper, and no man's name is over hers. The boy is hired today for his count, at day rates, same as any hand here. If anyone has business with either of them, he'll use their names clean." He waited. The wall found somewhere else to look. Then he put the boy's book on the scale table next to the buyer's. "2 counts of the same stream," he said. "They differ by 12 head. I'd like the difference explained or the cattle recounted." The buyer's man laughed first, which was a mistake. You want this room to take a deaf child scratching over a professional tally? I want the room to take arithmetic, Silas said. The boy's marks show your book too. Page 9. Both times your count fell behind, your face was turned to Mr. Ellery here, talking horses. The boy reads lips. He wrote down what you said while you were not counting. Would you like that readout, or would you like to recount? The room did not mutter now. The bank's agent, who had no side and much to lose from crooked paper, picked up Charlie's book and turned it slowly. The strokes were clean fives, gate by gate, with the buyer's numbers beside them in a child's careful hand. Recount, the agent said. Today, while the pens are still sorted, both books stand witness. It took until dark. Men rebuilt the count through the sorting gate a pen at a time, out loud, with the agent calling the strokes. The recount came in 12 head over the buyer's tally. Not 11, not 13, 12, exactly where a boy's pencil had said they would be. The agent closed both books and set them side by side. The tally stands corrected, he said. Settlement pays on the recount this season. For any past season this man's book touched, gentlemen, bring your ledgers to the bank and ask for an audit. The buyer opened his mouth and shut it again. That's the bank's position, the agent said. Anyone care to argue with arithmetic? Nobody did. Nobody apologized to Charlie, because rooms like that do not apologize. But something better happened. The agent asked the boy, face square and words slow, whether he would count the cull pen when it was run through again. Charlie looked at his mother, then at Silas, and nodded, and the room watched a deaf boy walk to a gate as hired help rather than as somebody's misfortune. The buyer's man was paid off and gone by morning. The tax he had been taking off the bench, season after season, was done. And every small outfit in that barn knew whose household had ended it. What broke after that was not Silas. It was the boycott. The union butcher's customers were miners' wives, and miners' wives could count 12 head as fast as anyone. It was widely worked out in Garrick, over fences and wash lines, that the Scab's widow's boy had just put money back into every bench outfit that sold a steer, and that the man who housed her had paid for the privilege out of his own trade all summer. Orders came back quietly, the way they had left. The company store in Cold Spur found his account again. Silas signed for his goods and offered no remarks. He had not defended himself once all season, and he did not start now that he was winning. He made one more piece of paper before the snow shut the bench road. He drove Nora and Charlie down to the county seat, past both towns and beholden to neither, to the county bank. There he had her caretaker's wages, the full season of them, entered in an account under her own name, with her own signature on the card. A married woman's money had a habit of becoming her husband's. A widow's money had a habit of becoming her landlord's. An account in her name at a bank neither town owned was hers in the only place it counted, which was in writing. "You'll want to know why the wages are all here," she said on the steps, "when I've watched you eat cheap coffee since August." "Caretaker's wages are camp expenses," Silas said. "A man doesn't skim his own camp." She looked at the passbook a long moment. "The envelope is still nailed in the cupboard," she said. "It'll stay nailed," he said. "A door with only one key ought to have 2 ways out. That's just sound building." They wintered well, which on the bench meant they wintered busy. Nora kept the stove banked and the woodpile ahead of the weather, and learned to melt snow in the boiler for wash water when the creek froze past the ice hole. Charlie ran a trap line for rabbits along the near fence and kept the tally book going, snowfall by snowfall. On Thursdays, Silas came up if the road allowed, knocked and waited, and stayed for supper if he was asked. Some Thursdays he was not asked. Nothing in his manner ever priced the difference. One supper in February, she set down her fork and studied him. "You never once asked me about my husband," she said. "Whether he was right to break the strike, whether I thought so." "It never seemed like my question," Silas said. "Every soul in 2 towns made it their question." "Every soul in 2 towns didn't marry him," he said. "You did. A man's reasons die with him. His family's supper doesn't. I only ever had a vote on the supper." She was quiet a while after that. "He'd have liked you," she finally said. "He liked men who could leave a thing alone." And on those winter evenings, at his own table a day's ride away, Silas worked at something he told no one about. Charlie and his mother spoke together in signs, some borrowed, most homemade. The kind of language-deaf children and their mothers built for themselves in the years before any school reached them. Hand talk was not rare on the range. Cattleman already used sign to work herds beyond earshot, and Silas knew that alphabet of distance well. So he began to learn Charlie's. He watched and remembered and practiced with his big, weathered hands by lamplight, and made a winter's slow, honest work of it, the same as fence wire or chinking. Spring opened the bench road in April. Silas rode up on a Sunday with the grass coming green through the last snow, and he knocked and waited. Nora opened her door with flour on her hands. Charlie sat at the table behind her. Whatever Silas had come to say, he did not say it to her first. He looked past her to the boy, raised his hands, and asked in Charlie's own signs, slow and plain, a question he had spent the winter learning to shape. Might he court the boy's mother, if the boy was willing? Charlie's face did the thing faces do when a whole winter suddenly explains itself. He looked at his mother. Nora had turned and caught the last of the signs, and she stood very still in her own doorway, holding her own key, with her wages banked in her own name and a fare to anywhere nailed inside the cupboard. She was, by every paper that mattered, entirely free to say no. "Ask me the words out loud," she said. "I want to hear what a man sounds like when he's asking, not offering." So he asked her, plainly, hat in his hands. She kept the answer to herself for a moment. Charlie's hands moved first, quick and bright, and Silas laughed before Nora could speak, because he had learned enough sign by then to be told yes twice in one doorway. She said it out loud anyway. The door stayed hers, and the key stayed hers, and he knocked at that door every Thursday of the courting, and waited, like any other man. On the wedding day, at the county seat, folk came down from Cold Spur and up from Garrick both, and stood in one room without burning anything. The envelope stayed nailed inside the cupboard door for years, until Charlie was grown. His mother took it down herself the day he left to keep books for the railhead stockyards. The fare was still inside. It had done its work without ever being spent, which was, Nora always said, the whole nature of the man who nailed it there.